When your friend says, "I can't sleep well these days," how do you respond? Some people start giving advice, such as, "You should take a bath around 90 minutes before going to bed," while others ask for elaboration and keep listening, saying, "Oh, really? Is it like you are having trouble falling asleep?" Which response should you give? Some people take the former approach, but in fact, providing advice is basically not the optimal solution. Supervisors at work in particular believe their job is to suggest a specific action when their subordinates come to ask for help, but, in most cases, it backfires. When we help other people solve problems, telling what to do or what not to do is largely ineffective, unless it is explicitly requested. Why is giving advice often unhelpful? Instead of suggesting specific actions, what can we do? The biggest reason why advice often fails is that it is a potential threat to our autonomy and self-efficacy. When you are teaching others what to do or what not to do, you are implying the following messages. I know better than you do. You are not going to get this without me. You are supposed to listen to my instructions. In other words, giving advice means you don't believe in their abilities to handle the situations themselves. When they receive such implicit messages, they feel that they are labeled incompetent and their autonomy is undermined. Sensing a threat to their self-efficacy creates an automatic defensive response. The better the advice is, the more they feel like resisting it. Winston Churchill once said, "I love to learn, but I hate to be taught." Humans are emotional animals. When we are inundated with logical persuasion, we often find it threatening to our self-esteem, and feel like rejecting it. Some might say, we should ignore emotions and think logically, or, it is unprofessional to be influenced by feelings. However, such remarks themselves are illogical and unrealistic, that they disregard the fact that our performance is subject to our psychological conditions. What's needed is to help others feel encouraged and empowered to take initiative in solving their problems themselves. Suggesting a specific action to others can be irresponsible. Essentially, advice is merely an imagination of the solution, based on a little knowledge of their situation. Moreover, it's the other person who will carry out the advice, not you. When they follow your advice and put it into action, you cannot take responsibility for the outcome. What matters is that they make their own decisions and feel responsible for the outcomes of their choice, and you should not deprive them of their opportunity to do so. Not to mention, it should never be about satisfying your own ego. Feeling competent as a good advisor or enjoying a sense of control over the other person. When we give advice to others, we are sometimes trapped by the desire to gratify ourselves, and we are often unconscious of it. Winston Churchill's mother Randolph left a comment on the British arch-rival politicians, William Gladstone and Benjamin Disraeli, saying, "When I left the dining room after sitting next to Gladstone, I thought he was the cleverest man in England. But when I sat next to Disraeli, I left feeling that I was the cleverest woman." No wonder she preferred to associate with Disraeli rather than Gladstone. When you are helping others solve their problems, it is not about you. You need to put yourself aside, and think and act sincerely for the sake of others. Since advice is ineffective in most cases, we can help others solve their problems with the following 3 interventions. First and foremost, we need to reduce their anxiety and increase their positive emotions. For the brain to work on a problem constructively, it requires a clear and quiet state of mind. The brain doesn't work well under severe anxiety and excitement. When they are implied that their approach is bad, their minds direct their attention to self-defense instead of solving the problem. This is the very reason why advice often backfires. As soon as you suggest specific actions, they may totally shut down. Instead, you can show empathy for their struggles by sharing your own related experiences, or point out the good aspects of their efforts, so that they can reach a positive state of mind. Secondly, we can help them simplify the problem into as few words as possible. The workspace of our brain is so small that it can handle around 5 units of information at a time. By turning a complicated problem into one short sentence, the brain can handle it with the least cognitive load. You need to be careful not to adopt an attitude that implies, "You can't sort things out by yourself, so I'm doing it for you." Instead, you should listen humbly and attentively, thinking, "I'd be happy if I can help you, so I'd like to understand your situation." When you summarize their situation with a short sentence, you should not be assertive. Rather, talk with respect, saying, "This is how I understand. Tell me if it's not right." Thirdly, you can share your related experiences in the past, hoping to give some inspiration to come up with an idea. All that's left is to wait patiently until they arrive at solutions by themselves. Essentially, trying to change other people's thinking and actions is extremely hard. Giving advice appears efficient, but, in fact, it is the least effective way, if it is given improperly and without the recipient's best interest in mind. Essentially, helping others solve their problems is quite difficult, because we have to constantly ask ourselves whether we maintain a proper attitude or not. For example, if your subordinates say that they want to resign, you as a boss want to, or probably have to, persuade them to stay. But the more apparent your desire is, and the harder you try to change their actions, probably the more likely they will reject the rationale to stay. On the other hand, if you sound indifferent to whether or not they stay, they might be disappointed, thinking that their presence or absence doesn't really matter. You need to stay balanced, put aside your desire if not abandoning it, and listen sincerely to find what is the best for them. Furthermore, helping others effectively also involves striking a careful balance. While it is beautiful that you are motivated to help others, you should not satisfy your ego by finding yourself helpful for others. If you cling on to the desire to contribute, it may rather appear egoistic and narcissistic. Therefore, you have to let go of attachment to the outcome. However, leaving your attachment to the result doesn't mean that you don't make the best effort. Think of this as giving a present. You try your best to choose the best present for them, but you don't cling on to feel good about their positive reaction. True leadership comes to the mind that is free from the desire to control others' behavior, and ego to prove oneself. After all, we might never settle on a definitive answer for the right attitude. We always have to monitor ourselves whether we are keeping a good mindset, and figure out the most appropriate attitude at each conversation. Only those who choose to put themselves in such difficulty can truly help others solve their problems, and as a result, earn gratitude, trust, and respect.